Welcome back to the Hardware Unboxed News Corner. A bit of a midweek special here as I'll be away on Friday, but luckily there's been a fair bit of news come up since our last News Corner. So let's get right into things without any delay. To kick things off, let's talk about the news that's making waves around the tech scene right now. Defective Nvidia GeForce RTX cards. We're seeing many more reports of these issues than we'd normally see from a GPU launch. The GeForce forums and Reddit are filled with users complaining about their RTX 2080 Ti cards coming back either dead from the factory or defective to the point where they cause artifacting, crashes, or blue screen straight out of the box. And we're not talking about driver issues here, because every standard troubleshooting tip seems to be ineffective for the people reporting these sorts of issues. The majority of reports seem to be related to Nvidia's RTX 2080 Ti Founders Edition, although a few users have also found issues with board partner models of this card. A few RTX 2080s also seem to be defective, but not nearly to the extent of the RTX 2080 Ti, though that could be because no one is buying the RTX 2080. This is a serious issue, and it's worth discussing because it doesn't appear to be a typical case of a few users reporting failures. Normally with every launch you get a couple of people getting a defective model and they'll go and complain, but with the RTX cards a large portion of people are having problems, including us here at Hardware Unboxed. We haven't had any issues with our Founders Edition cards or the RTX 2080 Ti, but we did have one board partner RTX 2080 die on us completely in exactly the same way as users have been reporting on the GeForce forums. Initially we suspected this was just a dud card, and that happens sometimes, but with such widespread reports of issues, it seems that we too have had these issues. We probably have more cards than the average person on hand, but not a massive number, and certainly we haven't experienced issues with previous launches. Our RTX 2080 in question was an AIB card based on the Founders Edition PCB design. We're not saying the Founders Edition PCB design caused the problems, or whether it's related at all, but it wasn't a specially designed board. The issues could be related to the large die size for Turing cards, particularly the 2080 Ti, which uses a massive 754 square millimeter die, or it could be related to the use of GDDR6 memory. We just don't know at this point. We also had a strange issue with another board partner RTX 2070 card where the card was stuck in a PCIe x4 configuration. That could be related to the issues people are seeing, or it could just be another random issue related to these RTX products. At the moment, Nvidia is suggesting users should RMA their cards, although some users are reporting that the RMA process is taking a long time due to supply constraints. Others have had to RMA cards more than once due to receiving a second, still defective card back from Nvidia. While there are plenty of reports on these issues, Nvidia's technical marketing team is currently stating that they are working with users individually, but we are not seeing any broader issues. This might suggest we're just hearing from a vocal minority of buyers facing issues, but it does seem like these complaints are much more widespread than Nvidia's past GPU launches. When we reached out to some industry contacts, one board partner told us they hadn't seen many cards RMA'd, but that they didn't really know what was going on with the failure issue, suggesting it was just FE models that were affected. One retailer told us they hadn't seen an unusually high RMA rate for RTX cards either, though again they didn't sell Founders Edition cards and said it was still too early to tell if it was a major issue. But on the other hand, we've also heard from a company that specializes in system builds, and out of the 9 RTX 2080 Ti cards that they had purchased, all of them were based on the Founders Edition design, and 3 of them have failed already. And again, they stated that the RMA process had been a bit of a pain for them so far. Anyway, we'll continue to monitor the situation, and we're following up with more industry contacts to see what the broader situation is. But at the moment, it's really not looking good for the RTX cards, and I think that the Founders Edition board design may have something to do with it. Not 100% sure at this stage. Again, we're still following up. But yeah, not great news for Nvidia and their RTX cards at the moment. All right, now we have a few other stories to get through and a few updates on 2 upcoming graphics cards, the AMD Radeon RX 590 and the GDDR5X version of the GeForce GTX 1060. I covered a few rumors surrounding both of these cards in the last news corner, but since then, a few more details have emerged. Starting with the RX 590, from what we're hearing, this graphics card isn't too far away, but don't expect it to provide a significant performance bump over the RX 580. While AMD is set to use a smaller 12nm FinFET process to manufacture this card, as confirmed this week by Video Cards, we're not expecting anything substantially different to the Polaris design. We're likely just getting a clock speed boost on on the same core count and configuration. While Final Fantasy 15 is a terrible benchmark, video cards did also spot an RX 590 entry into their database, showing performance around 10 to 20% higher than the RX 580. By using 12nm rather than 14nm, this performance jump should come at no increase to power consumption, and considering the architecture is the same, don't expect any new features. Of course, how the RX 590 stacks up will be largely determined by its price. 8GB RX 580 models are currently available for around $220 to $230 US, so we'd be hoping the RX 590 sits around $250 to $260 if rumored performance is correct. But who knows at this stage, we'll just have to wait for an official launch. We have much more concrete information on the GTX 1060 with GDDR5X memory because Gigabyte and Palette have officially unveiled cards that pack the faster memory tech. Known as the Gigabyte GTX 1060 G1 Gaming D5X 6G or the Palette GTX 1060 Gaming Pro OC Plus, these new GTX 1060 models basically use the exact same core configuration as existing GTX 1060s, which shouldn't come as a surprise. Similarly, at least in the case of Palette's card, core clock speeds are in line with the standard factory overclocked GTX 1060. As for the memory configuration, well, there's not a lot to get excited about here either. The Palette model comes with its GDDR5X clocked at 8.8 gigabits per second on the same 192-bit bus as the GDDR5 models, providing 211 gigabytes per second of memory bandwidth. This isn't all that impressive because there were already a few GTX 1060 models with 9 gigabit per second GDDR5 memory on board, providing slightly more bandwidth at 216 gigabytes per second. The one thing these GDDR5X models should provide is more overclocking headroom, considering GDDR5X is designed to hit 10 to 11 gigabits per second at the factory and can often be pushed higher than that. But aside from that, there really doesn't seem to be any benefit to these new GDDR5X models for consumers. They're going to offer roughly the same performance as the GTX 1060s we've been using for a few years now. And to be honest, that's a good thing. Considering the GDDR5X models are still called GTX 1060s, they should offer the same performance as existing GTX 1060s. Someone buying a GTX 1060 shouldn't need to dig into the spec sheet or look for D5X in the product name to figure out whether they're getting the regular 1060 or the faster GDDR5X 1060. So provided the performance is really the same between the two models when we get our hands on one of these cards, there's no need to slam Nvidia for dodgy naming with this one. As to why Nvidia decided to release a GDDR5X model of the GTX 1060, well, that's still a bit unclear. It's possible that the company purchased too many GDDR5X modules for their higher tier cards like the GTX 1080 and GTX 1080 Ti, so they needed to push out a cheaper model using GDDR5X to clear out some stock. There's also been speculation that these new GTX 1060s are using cut down GP104 dies rather than the usual GP106, so this could be another way for Nvidia to clear out defective GP104 stock. But again, we'll have to wait to find out on that one. This next topic is something I seriously didn't think I'd be talking about ever again. AMD has released a new Carrizo FM2 Plus APU known as the A8-7680. This APU is based on AMD's terrible Excavator architecture, and really, who knows why the company decided to release a new Excavator APU in 2018. There were a few indications that AMD were going to release a new 28nm FM2 Plus APU a couple of weeks back because a few motherboards from companies like ASRock bizarrely received BIOS updates to support a new Carrizo APU. And now we have an update to AMD's master product list showing a bunch of AD7680 listings, indicating there's a new A8-7680 in town. We're still not 100% sure what specs the A8-7680 will carry, but honestly, who cares? Because literally no one should be buying it at this point. No one should be buying FM2 Plus motherboards either. Really, if you were thinking of upgrading your old CPU to something in AMD's lineup, it has to be Zen-based, even if it requires a full platform upgrade. Don't buy anything Excavator-based FX or APU. At least that's what we recommend. Okay, those are the main topics for this week done. Let's get into some shorter topics. AMD has ended 32-bit driver support for their Radeon graphics cards. The final version for 32-bit operating systems is version 18.9.3 from October 5th. Newer releases will be for 64-bit OSs only. This follows on from Nvidia, who ended support for 32-bit drivers last year. I'm sure the few people that still run 32-bit Windows will be annoyed by this move, but the vast, expansive majority of people should be running 64-bit Windows at this point, so it really should shouldn't be a loss. Nvidia has launched a new game bundle offering Monster Hunter World to those who purchase a GeForce GTX 1070 Ti, GTX 1070 or GTX 1060 6GB between now and November 29th. Like with previous game bundles, you'll have to buy one of these cards at a participating retailer who will provide you with the game code. You then redeem the code through Nvidia's specific redemption portal. Currently, this is the only game bundle Nvidia are running. If you buy a higher or lower end Pascal card, you won't get anything. And of course, Nvidia's new RTX cards also come without any bundled games. AMD's Vega mobile GPUs are finally seeing the light of day. They are set to be included with some upper tier models of Apple's refreshed MacBook Pros, which will be available in November. There are two GPU options, the Radeon Pro Vega 20 and Radeon Pro Vega 16, each offering performance around that of an RX 560 desktop GPU, or in the case of Vega 20, a little bit higher. As AnandTech notes, these GPUs are genuine Vega GPUs, unlike Vega M, used with Intel's Kaby Lake G, which was a combination of Polaris and Vega elements. However, these Vega GPUs are a bit slower than Vega M's top-end configurations, though they still pack 4GB of HBM2. For clock speeds, we're looking at a maximum of 1300 MHz for Vega Pro 20 with 1280 stream processors and 1185 MHz for Vega Pro 16 with 1024 SPs. Final topic for this week, Inno3D has a new cooler design for their GeForce RTX graphics cards called the iChill X3. A couple of people in our Discord chat posted images of this thing and it looks absolutely ridiculous. Not only is the heatsink enormous, but the front of the cooler has a boatload of RGB LED lighting and there's even an OLED display on the top edge to show you GPU stats. So if you want a bit of graphics card to go with your RGB light show, Inno3D's new GPU will be for you. Alright, that's it for this week's News Corner. We'll probably be back later in the week with another episode, so subscribe and stay tuned for that. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it. Consider supporting us on Patreon to get access to our Discord chat and monthly live streams, and I'll catch you next time.